Hi everyone, I'm Jeff Copeland. I want to welcome you back to Jeff's Nonsport Card Universe, where we look at the history, evolution, and just plain fun of collecting non-sport cards. Now today we're going to look at one of my all-time favorite areas within non-sport card collecting, Exhibit Arcade Cards. In the hobby, they're typically just referred to as exhibit cards. So you know what I'm talking about. I'll hold one up right away. This is Clint Walker, who played Cheyenne in the wonderful TV Western in the late 50s and early 1960s. This is representative of these cards. They were on very thick cardboard stock, typically about 3.5 inches by 5 inches, and these were sold in machines, exhibit arcade machines, at amusement parks, at carnivals, sometimes movie theaters, a lot of places where youngsters would gather. Now, to begin today, I thought it'd be fun if you could actually see how these were issued. I'm going to stand up and step to the side here. I actually own one of these machines. They were typically metal boxes shaped like this that were on stands at the various places where they were sold. This one is actually set up so it could do either exhibit cards or regular trading cards. Mine is a 1958 model, and it's set up for regular size cards. On the left side here, you could get Topps baseball cards of that year, the 1958 Topps cards. Or on the right, if you wanted, you could get the Zorro cards, a great non-sports set of that era as well. Now, the way it worked was this. You took your nickel, you put it in the slot in this lever, you pushed in the lever, a rake at the end of the mechanism would then pull back out your cards, and you got your cards. They were distributed in that fashion. So that's how these exhibit card machines worked. All right, now I remember as a kid, at the end of every school year for our school carnival, we would go to Chain of Rocks Park, and these machines were everywhere. So I'd always come home with a few when I had extra change left at the end of the day. Now, most of us who collect non-sport cards have boxes of these around the house. Here's just a few that I just happened to pick up in one of my boxes this morning, just to show you. We almost all have these around here, and part of the reason is there are so many different subjects for the exhibit cards. I give you a challenge. Try to think of a subject where they didn't do exhibit cards. Now, a little bit of quick history here before I show you a range of them. In the early 1900s, a gentleman by the name of J. Frank Meyer bought the Exhibit Arcade Company in Chicago, Illinois, and he was a printer by trade, and he decided that there would be a lot of money made in offering exhibit cards in machines like this at amusement parks and other places. And guess what? He was right. From the very get-go, he started doing different series of cards and for decades became the premier producer of the exhibit cards. Now, let me show you a range of those that have been available through the years. My all-time favorite area are the cowboys because I grew up watching Westerns all over the place. Now, I'm just going to show you a range of them. How about good old Roy Rogers? Remember his television show and his movies? How about James Garner, who played Maverick on the television show? Michael N. Cera, who played Cochise on the Broken Arrow television show? My all-time favorite Western, Paladin, Have Gun Will Travel, Richard Boone. And then good old Gabby Hayes. Gabby Hayes actually had all of his teeth pulled out. So then he talked like this. Hey, Hoppy, get the horses. And he was a sidekick for Hopalong Cassidy and others as well of the era. There were so many subsets of all the different sets. Let me show you just a little bit with the Westerns. Here's John Wayne. He appears in what looks like a playing card. And there were all kinds of these. Here's Randolph Scott, Glenn Ford, James Arnaz, who played Matt Dillon on Gunsmoke. You could collect all of these and play cards with them, although the cards were quite larger. Even movie scenes from Westerns started showing up on the exhibit cards. Here are just a couple examples of those. Then they really got fancy toward the end, 4-in-1, where you got 4 cowboys on one. So you have the cowboys to collect if you wanted. If you wanted to go another direction, How about stars of the big screen, the movies you were seeing in the theater? This is one of the more desired exhibit cards in all of the range, and this is Bob Hope. This is a great picture of Bob Hope. From the 1940s, an exhibit card for Humphrey Bogart. That's a nice image of Bogey. Alan Ladd, who will forever be Shane in one of my other favorite Westerns. How about Tyrone Power, who played everybody from Jesse James to Swashbucklers and Pirates on the High Seas? How about Abbott and Costello? Remember their movies? There are actually several of them in the exhibit set. And then somebody like Greer Garson, isn't that just an absolutely beautiful card? So you had stars of the big screen. But remember, TV in the 1950s was in its infancy, but a lot of those people who were in the shows became stars as well and ended up on exhibit cards. Here's Guy Williams, who played Zorro. I love this. He looks just like his Zorro character. How about Ellen Young, the human component of the Mr. Ed television show? Well, Wilbur. How about Gary Moore? He was the host of all kinds of TV shows in the 1950s. Here's Jan Sterling, who was a love interest in so many shows in the 50s. Scott Brady was the bad guy in so many Westerns. I mean, the guy probably died 100 times in movies. And then even the announcers, this is from CBS, were celebrities when TV was in its infancy. So you had those. But if you wanted to go another direction with exhibit cards, how about musicians? Here's a young Perry Como. How about a young Sammy Davis Jr.? Great picture of him. How about a teen heartthrob, Tommy Sands? There were also all kinds of these for musicians of the era. Elvis even had his own cards in the exhibit run. You could get them for Herman's Hermits, you could get them for the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Animals. As time went on, you could get all the major groups on them just about. Well, if you didn't want those, how about if you like Cars? There's a whole series, many series actually, of hot rod cards of the 1960s and 1970s within the exhibits. If you were into airplanes, tons of them, tons. If you wanted something really interesting, I'll just show you a quick panorama here. One of the more popular subjects for exhibit cards, young girls. Now, these started about 1910 and worked their way all the way up to the 70s. I'll show you some of the decades here and what representative cards look like. From the 1930s, a little bit risque, but yes, the feathers do cover everything up. In the 1940s, the mutoscopes became popular. This is from 1941. It's absolutely gorgeous. Here's another mutoscope from 1945. A lot of the GIs during World War II hung these up in the barracks or kept them with them to remind them of the girls back home. These are highly prized by collectors today and command a premium. Here we go to the 1950s. We get much more conservative. 1960s, still conservative, a little bit cheesecakey in pose. And then as we get up toward the end, full color shots, typically with seams in the background. So you had those. Now, if you wanted to go another direction, just to give you an idea of the range here, if you were a sports collector, boxers and baseball players. Here's Nellie Fox. This is a great exhibit card of him. Here's Gil Hodges from the Brooklyn Dodgers, the Bums, the Boys of Summer. Hank Bauer, one of the better players on the New York Yankees of the 50s and early 60s. And some people today are even grading and encapsulating their favorite exhibit cards. This is Red Schoendienst, one of my favorite players for the St. Louis Cardinals. Now, this will give you an idea of the range of what's out there, but again, I give you a challenge. These are about everything. You could get them that were fortune-telling cards, would tell you a fortune. You could get them that had scenes of famous American sites, Mount Rushmore, the Grand Canyon, Niagara Falls, a full range of them there. The problem with collecting these, and the reason so many people like me just have them stuffed in a box, is I still have yet to find a comprehensive checklist or guide for them. Yes, there are clubs for exhibit arcade cards, and they do the best they can to try to keep everybody informed, but there's so many variations. Plus, the people that did the exhibit cards, rather than paying additional money for new photographs because they had to have new cards every year, they would simply take cards and they would crop them down. Let me see if I can get an example here. My Shadings card, for example. So this might be issued one particular year, 1947. The next year, it might look like this, where it's cropped just as torso on up. So to save money, they just cropped them. Some are labeled printed in USA, some are not. Some are made in USA, some have no copyright designation whatsoever. There are just oodles and oodles of variations, which makes it very complicated to collect them. So most people collect them just for fun. They were a great way to look at the history of America and especially our cultural history as time went by. Now, one of the beauties of collecting these is today they're only $1 or $2 a piece, except for the major stars. They're going to command a little bit of a premium, but very inexpensive way to get into a wonderful branch of non-sport card collecting. Now, a few shout outs here before we end for today. I'd first like to thank Ron Britt of Raleigh, North Carolina, one of the premier experts in exhibit cards in America, for sharing his knowledge to help me with this video. I'd also like to recommend that you go to therappermagazine.com if you haven't already and get your free issue of the premier magazine for non-sport card collecting in this country. It's a great magazine. And then, as always, if you liked what you have seen, please subscribe. So this is our look at Exhibit Arcade Cards. I hope you've enjoyed it. In the meantime, and until next time, enjoy your cards and enjoy collecting. Have fun, everyone.